We have Reshard Neal as our guest, and Reshard is a visionary who's all about helping improving people's lives from bringing their maximum pleasure, happiness, and just all around making people better. So, Reshard, tell us a little bit more about what you do, your vision, and that's it. Yeah,
okay. Well, like you said, Claudio, my name is Reshard, and my vision is ultimately to change the world, but I like to start with each individual. And like you said, pleasure maximum is just pretty much finding a way to reach your essence of happiness, peace, content, relaxation. And what kind of got me started on that journey was just life experience. So when I was younger, like around 14, I had like more of that was my darker time, or time of going through things or more challenges and stuff. And you know, as I'm making my way through life, I found that I'm striving to kind of get to this point where I don't have these issues, or I don't feel this way, or I'm not in such distraught. And over years of time, you know, I got closer with a higher power, so spirituality. I studied psychology and philosophy, and those things brought me a lot of awakenings and helped me get to what I call my pleasure maximum. It was a gradual process, but through these endeavors, I was able to get to where I want to be. So I didn't know during that time that this would be my purpose or my journey or my desire.
Right.
But now I have like a overwhelming desire or goal to help each person along the way in their own story, whichever way that can be, you know? So
yeah, it's been like the same for me too. As I've progressed in my life and found solutions to my problems, and then that all of a sudden they start to turn into passions or things that I'm really interested about. But you studied psychology and philosophy in school?
Yes.
Okay. What school?
So I went to East Stroudsburg University. It's in Pennsylvania. I live in Florida now, but I went there. It was not that far from my house. It was in the town I grew up in. So it was pretty interesting. It definitely met some great professors, opened my mind to a lot of things. So I'm very thankful for that.
Was there a specific like major or area in psychology and philosophy that you studied, you know, from clinical to behavioral to neuroscience, or
yes,
just in general?
Yes, like the specific degree is in clinical psychology.
Okay.
And I always took a liking to that. Like when I would study abnormal psychology or cognitive psychology or theories of personality, like that type of stuff really interested me because, you know, again, I could relate to it from what I've been through and like where my mind was at a time, but it also gives you insight as to, oh no, this is a real thing, or this is what's really occurring while you're experiencing it. This is like the in-depth breakdown of what that is. And then you start to look around and it says, okay, everybody has something, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And you know, that's where some of the philosophy may come in of like, well, what is pain? What is darkness? What are these challenges?
Yeah.
Like there's meaning behind it. Let's go a little deeper and not just have the traditional view of, oh, if something's wrong, let's do something about it. We have to fix this. This is a problem. No, you should embrace and love these experiences because they're molding you into who you are, and they're just putting you on a different path of life and giving you a deeper insight.
I agree 100%. But have you heard of Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson, I heard of him, but I'm not that familiar with his work.
Have you heard of Sam Harris?
Sam Harris, no.
Okay. Well,
I heard of him now, so.
Yeah. I'm going to dive into some of their beliefs and something that like I've just been trying to understand recently. So Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist from the University of Toronto, and he also taught at Harvard. And he has a bunch of YouTube videos, like 1 million subscribers, and he uploads all of his lectures onto YouTube.
Okay.
And he talks about a lot of meanings from archetypical stories and from mythology and all these things and how it relates to life. But Sam Harris, his view that I find really interesting that I'm trying to understand is on the concern of free will. So let's look at, first, I guess we could go into how I even came across this topic. And you studied abnormal psychology, so I'm sure you'll have great insight into this. Jordan Peterson was elaborating in one of his lectures on how being able to properly think is very useful, and a good way to practice getting better at thinking is understanding how to write. So one of his topics that I just found a little interesting or just wanted to dive into is like, all right, I'll write my first essay on does evil exist? Just exploring all these things down into, okay, what do I consider evil? First, evil has to be somebody who knows what they're doing is wrong, feels like they can make another choice, and still does it anyways. So we don't consider an animal tearing apart another animal evil. It's just kind of, you know, it's like what they do. Or if you're killing someone in self-defense, it's not evil. Even Hitler, to me, to a point. Like, yes, obviously what he did was evil. Not denying that in any sense whatsoever. But the difference is, you could even say in a way what he thought he was doing was good in a sense. He's trying to make the
Okay.
race more pure.
Right.
So it wasn't even like generated by evil actions. But let's look at someone who's purely evil. Maybe somebody who tortures other people and knows what they're doing is wrong and considers himself evil and says, I'm not doing this for the good.
Right.
Well, as I was exploring all these reasons as why do these people become that way and how did they become that way, it's a mix of factors from nature and nurture. Some had a tumor in their head, like the Columbine shooter. Some have schizophrenia, or they're a psychopath, or personality traits. But all these things come down to that.
Right.
And it started to seem like, are these people really responsible for what they do if you look at it on a deep level? So this is where free will comes into play. Sam Harris's argument is that free will doesn't exist. What's your take on free will first?
He believes that free will doesn't exist.
Yeah, do you believe free will exists?
And so I want to just make sure that I have it before I answer it.
Yeah.
So he believes that free will doesn't exist, and one of the premises are, look at these examples of people who have done quote unquote evil. It was out of their control.
Not that only way.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this. Every decision that you make has been influenced in one way or another.
Okay.
So let's say two people come out, or all right, let's just look at psychopaths. Most people who end up being serial killers or psychopaths or doing violent crimes had a terrible childhood or had a mental disorder.
Right.
Not all of them.
Right.
And not everyone who had a mental disorder or a terrible childhood became a psychopath.
Okay.
But there's a high correlation with that.
Right.
But it's to ask, okay, so what's the difference between, let's say two people go through a breakup. One person gets depressed and just eats a lot of food, and the other one decides to go out and get in shape and say, I'm going to make myself better because of this.
Right.
They both had the free will to make that decision, but what made them want to make that decision? Like, okay, so their beliefs and their thoughts, well, where did that come from? Right. Prior decisions, prior influences, where did all this come from, even if all that was the same? Their personality, their soul, did they get to choose their personality or their soul? How much, you trace it all the way back, it's like, did you choose that?
I get what you're saying. That's very interesting. I would say, well, I want to kind of base off of my personal experience and then try to find
a middle
how this
ground
can relate.
somewhere.
In my personal experience, I always felt like there was a blend between a higher power and your free will, in the sense of, but I also relate to the guy you just spoke of, because I feel like there's a higher power that orchestrates everything. And even with your darkness, like, you're going to go through things that you can't predict. And I believe that the higher power that we have that works through all of us gives us both sides of the coin. It's not just about being happy and relaxed and relieved and everything is cool and all jolly, because if that was the case, then what would you have to compare it to? How would you even know that's happiness? And I also feel like, just based on experience, that life is kind of meant to be eventful. It's not meant to be one way, because there's diverse lessons to be learned. Just like if you watch a movie, it's like if it was just one scene or one setting and one way of being the whole time, you turn it off, because it's just, that's not growth. And if you're not growing, you're essentially dying or you're staying stagnant. So the mix of both kind of allows us to evolve. And I remember, like, when I was going through that rougher period, I was more like depressed and driven by fear and like worried about what people thought, and I didn't even know what my personality was. And I was like, I want to change this. Like, I want to feel better. Like, this is after like about 4 years of feeling this way. Right. I'm like, first I'm just thinking it'll pass or whatever, or like, you go into different avenues that you think are going to be of some type of help to you. But when I really sat down, I was like, let me make a change. And one of the first things I did was pray. I was like, let me pray on it, because my family came from a Christian background. Throughout my life, though, I've grown, like I said, to believe there's a higher power, but I don't know if I say it's the Christian God or that God or this God, but I'm just saying, let me pray, because I know there's something out there. I believe there's something. So I prayed, right? And then I said, even before I prayed, I made the commitment to myself that no matter what happens, like if these prayers come true or not, I'm going to do all that I can do to make this change, to make this happen. So the reason why I would say there has to be some form of free will, or it's hard to say whether it's free will or if it's just influenced will, because it's like someone who could have been in my same shoes may have had a different approach to it, right? So I feel like that right there is the free will, in a sense. Like, and maybe it's not so free as it just came from nowhere, but it's free in the sense of you have the ability to decide A or B. You have 100%. You have the ability to make that choice. And I feel like
If you want to get to that,
All right.
or you can carry it with you. But yeah, I agree with exactly with what you're saying, that free will, you have different choices. So I definitely don't dispute that. The tricky part that comes in, don't forget to turn back on. Tricky part that comes into it. So you definitely have two different options you can choose from. But it's, why did you choose one over the other?
Right.
Like, why did you choose A and why did so and so choose B? What are the differences that accounted for you choosing to turn your life around as opposed to dwelling in it?
Well,
even use your real examples. Like, what do you think was it that influenced you to say, I'm going to make a difference, instead of saying, I'm going to let this consume me?
Yeah, I think so. Like, that's why I'm like, my first initial thought is to say that there has to be free will, because if two people are at that same standpoint, one makes a decision to go left, one makes a decision to go right.
Right.
Now, I can also see, what was the guy's name one more time? I'm sorry.
Sam Harris. Yeah.
Sam Harris. I can see Harris's way of saying, like, no, but it's influence, because when I think of why did I want to change that way of being, is because I was like, it's unpleasurable. It's not what I epitomize as what my life should be, or what I feel I'm worth, or what I deserve. But then we could also look at it like, no, because I talk about bringing someone to their pleasure maximum, right? Because I believe that we all ultimately want to be happy. Now, yes, I've come to the position of feeling like that happiness, getting to that mountaintop, consists of embracing your pain, and therefore having the door be open to the pleasure again, because you have to embrace it and understand what it is and use it, and then that gets you to a more pleasurable destination. But that's me coming from a view of thinking like we all want pleasure initially. Right. And that kind of complements what Sigmund Freud spoke about. Like, I finished reading his book, Civilization and Its Discontents, a couple weeks ago, and he says that we're all driven by the pleasure principle, right? So even like what you're alluding to, he would say, like, even when you see aggression in another person. Yeah. The reason why we don't do these things nowadays is because what he termed the superego, it's like the ideals and the morals that have been ingrained in you through society and other authority figures in your life, that has dictated what you do. Even if you feel this impulse or this prompt to rise and do something, you won't do it because it's like, that's wrong. And he believes that society is driven off of guilt. Like, that's the thing that holds us back, because even if you don't do let's say you got mad about something and let's say it's your boss, your boss pissed you off, you wanted to punch them in the face, right? You won't do it because you know that's not a societal norm, it's a consequence. And also, speaking of consequences, he would say, like, different things that were results of behaviors by authority figures. Like, if you did something and you got like choked or you got punched in the face, that also is what is part of the superego that's kind of ingrained itself in you to say, hey, you shouldn't do that. But also, he said, like, the thought of it, like, even that you had that thought, like, whether, like, I don't know if, I'm pretty sure you have, like, because most people have, like, you may have gotten into arguments with your dad coming up when you were growing up, and you may have felt like hateful things towards him, or maybe your mother or whoever it was. And then even if you don't act on that, you kind of beat yourself up about it, because he also goes off the premise that energy is never lost. It's it's only transferred. So, like, if you feel that aggression, you feel that thing, and you don't go ahead and act on it, you're going to in turn beat yourself down about it and say, I should have never did that. Why would I think that? Oh, that's my mom. Why? And that's the super ego kind of weighing in on you, telling you, hey, that's wrong. Now you should feel like a bad person. How dare you, whatever. So even that person who felt the aggression, if they would have acted on it, they would have got some pleasure out of it. They would have felt like, I'm getting justice now. Or I was wrong, so now I'm doing right. So, that's kind of making me question what I initially thought, like, maybe there is no free will, because it's all coming from a pleasure principle, which I believe, our lives are bigger than us. Like, we didn't control ourselves getting here. Like, we were just born and we learned to say, oh, this is my hand, this is my ear, this is my brain. But really, it's all a gift. It's all like, even you're just a blah, like how you just get here, right? And then you figured it out along the way. So we didn't even create ourselves. So therefore, I don't think we even created these instincts that we have. Therefore, we may not have free will, because everything that we have, even if it's in the direction of pleasure or the direction of doing something that we feel is just or right, the negative connotation that's added onto it, who's to say whether that is or isn't? Like, maybe we don't have free will. Maybe we're just living off of our innate impulses, and we've put judgment on these behaviors and put them in this category or that category. But essentially, we're just driven by the desire to have that satisfaction. So I don't know. That's something I have to think on now.
That's what I'm like struggling with.
It's real interesting.
Because I don't want it to be true. Because that being true means you can't blame people who harm you or criminals, and that means you can't take responsibility for all the great things that you've accomplished.
That's true as well.
But like when I just keep coming back to it, so like trying to like simplify it, I guess in a sense. So let's say you make a decision between two different thoughts that come into your head. Well, number one, where did those two different thoughts come from? And why didn't you think of thought three? It never occurred to you. So you're only free to make a decision between those two thoughts. And it's just like, where does your innate desire for fitness and your passion for psychology, and where do these things come from? Okay, they come from your personality. Well, where does your personality come from? Okay, maybe it comes from your affluence, the people you were hanging around. Did you choose all of them? You chose some. You didn't choose some. Why did you choose some? Maybe it was a book that you read. Okay, why did you choose that book? Okay, and then if you keep tracing it all the way back, even past your upbringing and your parents, it's like, okay, now we're looking at genetics. Well, you didn't get to choose your genetics. And even if you do have a soul that makes these distinctions, you didn't get to choose your soul. So who are you to say, oh, proud me, I'm not a psychopath because I wasn't born with a psychopathic soul. And, well, maybe he's just unlucky and you got lucky. That's just one theory of it. I'm not saying it's 100% true. I'm just like trying to attack it and just see like, is there any way to make it disprove it? Because I would like it to not be true. Is there any way to disprove
it?
Because one way that I've heard or looked against, like you were saying before, when you make a decision between two choices, what we tend to do is we look out into the future. We don't look at it like if you're driving a car, you don't look at exactly right in front of you because you already ran it over if you're going 40 miles per hour. You look a quarter of a mile ahead. What's going to possibly happen? So you do that with your two decisions. You say, okay, this can possibly happen, this can possibly happen. And obviously what you think can possibly happen is informed through your past experiences, through what you've read, through the current emotion that you're going through, the state of mind that you're in. But then if you just trace all that back, like where did that come from? How did you lead up to your past knowledge, your current emotion and all these things? It's all prior events and all prior experiences and your genetics and some things that you really didn't have control to choose over.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to think of how could you even disprove it. I don't know. Like, I feel like, life, even studying psychology, I feel like in a way life could kind of be a contradiction. Like, absolutely. Because it's just about having an impulse or having a belief in something and finding all the evidence for that claim, right? But then someone could come along and see that same claim and look at it a completely different way.
Right. And it's like, what makes someone else look at it differently from how you looked at it? Like, why is that even a thing? Why have you never even thought of it that way?
Right. And then, with free will, it's also like, I kind of attacked it on or approached it on the sense of like, all of our behaviors come from the drive of wanting pleasure or wanting satisfaction. But that's a feeling thing. Who, like, was it free will? I don't think God came down and told my mom to name me Reshard. You know, we get thoughts in our head that we feel like, oh, that's a sign, that's something telling me something, that's intuition. But I don't know, like, because you could look at something as basic as that, like,
It's a tricky topic that I haven't been able to answer yet. But assuming that we have free will, what's your method on being able to deliver happiness or creating happiness for yourself, and what advice do you have for people to achieve happiness?
Okay. Well, hold on. I wanted to say something. I'm going to get to that question, but I just thought something. I don't know if you ever heard of Jean-Paul Sartre. He was an existentialist, and pretty much existentialists believe that existence precedes essence, right? So
essence meaning like
what the thing is, like we exist first and then we
determine what it means.
It up right. And decide what life is going to be or what the meaning of it is. So many people who believe like in like Christianity or any other type of religion or just, the popular idea of God, they think that no, essence precedes the existence. Like, no, you're supposed, like, you were born into something that's already set up. You're born into a structure. You're born into like Christmas is supposed to be the 25th of December. That's just how it's been. Like God made it that way. Right. This holiday is supposed to be this way. We're supposed to go to church on Sunday because that's how it's already been set up. This is how a mother and son are supposed to interact, how a father and son, this is what you're supposed to do, So, but then the opposite of that is the existentialist view where it's like, no, the existence comes first and then we determine our essence, right? So it's like you kind of you pretty much have
I just so the opposite view.
And he would say, I'm gonna assume, and maybe, just go one step further, and he would say like, well, we created the concept of God, right? So like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
it's like, and we gave God all these attributes to kind of make ourselves feel comfortable. Like maybe someone saying that they have no free will kind of makes them feel comfortable for like the
things that they do wrong. It takes away their responsibility, right?
And then even like, I've been reading this book called The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins, right? And he pretty much broke down like how, like, and again, I'm only like the third or fourth chapter in, like, but it's pretty deep, like pretty much how he looks at the world from its beginning, like he calls it the primeval soup. They look at all of the elements that were most likely here from the beginning of time. It's like carbon dioxide, oxygen, I want to say hydrogen, and then like there's something else. And they kind of like did an experiment where they had those gases or those elements in some type of container and shined like light through it, like I don't know if it was a flashlight, but just some artificial light, and they held it there for a couple of days, right? And then throughout those days, after I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 days that passed, they saw different types of molecules start to just pop up out of nowhere. If this happened on any other planet or anything, they would kind of determine that as life, those molecules, because the molecules just atoms that have connected and then got bigger and then it became a molecule. So then he started seeing how like they would like start to they had an affinity for other molecules. Like there were certain molecules they kind of agreed with and some they didn't agree with. But however, a bunch of them started matching up. So then he kind of theorizes that over thousands of millions of years, like he's going on to like the whole, from the essence of the time the earth was born, like he believes that like these atoms kind of like formed and like had an affinity for one another and made certain templates. And there's a template here, a template there, whatever. Then over these years, they start to like break off, like they just broke off for whatever reason. Like he said, it's not likely that they would just break off on their own, but he was like over it. We're talking about the probability of thousands of millions and millions and millions of years, and pretty much once they broke off, that's what kind of initiated the replicator gene, where it's like now we have like this template that was one has become two, and now they have, like, even though they're separate, I still have certain molecules that have an affinity or compatibility with other molecules that are floating around, right? And this one over here that I broke off from, they're still a part of me, so they have their own affinity, and we're meeting up with these, and that one's meeting up with this one, and then they break, and that's where like DNA, the replicator, he said, started. And pretty much he gets to, like, I'm giving you the paraphrase version, right, but pretty much he's getting to the point, like, don't emphasize the word selfish, emphasize gene. There's a gene that's pretty much running us, and all these emotions and stuff that we have, positive, negative, ups, downs, whatever you want to call it, everything can be kind of broken down. Even this table can be broken down to like this minute form, and saying this is my new form of like just of replication, and it replicated into this type of essence. And like he also hints or like alludes to Darwin's theory of like survival of the fittest. Right. It's pretty much survival of the gene, where it's like eventually when those atoms became molecules and they broke off and started pairing up with other molecules, they had to start, there was like so many different elements that went into it. There was like the ones that lasted longer were the genes that can replicate quicker, and the ones that had less error when they replicated. And then once there was more of this one, there's going to be other genes that try to attack it. So they have to make a wall, which is what? The cell wall. Now we have cells that graduate into cells. So, and then we eventually graduate into this, into that, into that, into that. So he sees it more from a minute atom, molecule, gene level. And again, if that's true, then it goes back to we have no free will. We're really just these genes or whatever that are like kind of acting on their own behavior. But then he goes into, but just because this is the direction that the gene or the atom wants to go, that doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to tame it or to like alter it. So then, that goes into the theory of epigenetics of being able to bend your genes.
Yep.
And like, so it's like, who
That's
knows?
the
Like,
argument
it's
against
so
it, yeah.
deep. Like, yeah, it's so deep, man. So I mean, I don't know, but that was something that popped into my mind before you asked me the next question.
Yeah, I mean,
just
if you
share
still
that
want to
because,
keep going down that topic, we can, or do you want to?
Yeah, we can go to a different topic because I'm not even 100% sure what the answer is. Like, we're going to be talking about this forever.
Do you want to try maybe real quick to
will.
see if we can work on the opposite end? Let's be the antagonist and say like how free will does exist. Let's try to just give up every explanation. So my explanation for even assuming, go ahead and do that. Even assuming that let's assume what they're saying, that free will doesn't exist in the different genes, or that your genes and all these different things that you have no control over are ultimately responsible for your impulses, your personality, your decisions you make. Well, that can be true. Like, obviously there's limits to our free will, right? You can only make a decision between two things that you thought of. You can, if you've never heard of Plan C doesn't exist to you. You can't choose it. But you do have free will in a sense, or at least it certainly feels like we have free will, and we act like we have free will. And that's the pragmatist view, which is, what works in the world is kind of true, as opposed to whatever everything else says and how we act. Basically, it's actions more powerful than words. So we act like free will is true. Our justice system is based around free will. But the thing about it is, so even if all that is true, couldn't that person who maybe has those impulses, they can look into the future and they can see, I have two options here. Option A will change my path, and if I pursue this and just a small foot in the door, right? Just start doing little small good deeds, I can become a good person over in the long run, because epigenetics meaning that you can change your neurons and the wiring, and it will slowly change you into this course. Or I see that I can choose course B and continue to do these small little evil, cruel acts and end up becoming an evil person. And now it's my choice to pick which one I want to do. So in that sense, you almost do have free will to choose. You can look ahead in the future, just like with the car, and say, okay, this route takes me here, this takes me here. Which one do I want to become? That would be like my argument against it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I mean, it definitely does, but it's just like, I'm kind of hung up on where do our impulses come from? Like, it's like, even if you choose between good and bad or right and left,
why did you choose that one?
And who gave you right and left? It's like, even if you choose left, well, you're acting off of an impulse that was granted to you through something greater. And I think it also kind of and that's kind of why I brought up the theory of
the atoms.
Even existentialism, and the atoms as well, because it's like, it kind of stems back to, what do you ultimately believe? Like, what's your ultimate worldview of what life is? And once you can answer that, you can kind of like, if you don't believe, for example, in God, or if you don't believe in a higher power, if you believe that, because I think even atheists have to believe in some type of higher power, even if it's themselves.
They act like it,
right? Exactly. So like, even if it's themselves, whatever they want to attribute the credit to what we know as life, you still believe in something, right? So I'm hung up on the premise because I'm like, ultimately, I believe there's a higher power, so I believe a higher power gives me all my impulses. But someone who doesn't think that, they're not going to necessarily have such a hard time with the free will debate, because it's like, no, I don't believe that something created me anyway.
Right.
That is, I'm sorry for coughing.
No worries.
They kind of feel like almost they're their end all be all, or at least nature is, So like, it kind of makes me think, like, I know Friedrich Nietzsche, who's a philosopher who kind of questioned the theory of good and evil. Is it about good and evil, or is it about power being powerful and powerless, right? So like someone who, hold on, let me take a swig. Someone who, for example, like, if you're a kid in the classroom and you raise your hand and wait to get called on to speak, you do your homework when it's asked, you line up properly when the teacher's you guys are ready to transfer classes or go to a different part of the building. Yeah. Are you being a good student, or are you practicing powerlessness? Like, the teacher will call you good, but it's because you're keeping her in power and she feels in power and you're staying in your role, or is it because you really did anything good? Like, is that really morally good? He raised his hand. I mean, he got in line when I asked, is that really immoral? Like, it's like, okay, he's really just feeding into your power. Like, so, and if you think that, it's also like, then what do you think life is in general? If you don't think that good or peace or, that form of like existence in the world, if that form of like, if you don't think that essence is anything, if you don't think good, peace, blessings, things like that even exist, or even like something that's driving the world, you're more probably prone, or you have probably a further inclination to say like, it's we're making it more than it is, guys. It's all about power. Like, you're only going to be here for, let's say, maybe even 100 years or less. There's no great power that kind of got us here. It's all chance, if we're going to the Big Bang Theory and all that stuff. Like, so then they're going to say, okay, it's all chance. We've determined what we want life to be. Because I remember even Freud said that he was an atheist. He said that religion is like the opium of the people. Like, we got ourselves high believing that there's a higher power and that there's God and all these great things are happening. Someone who doesn't believe that and just says like, hey, it's just about chance. This could have turned out either way. Yeah, morals and the 10 Commandments or principles and virtues, yeah, they're good to kind of keep order in society, but they don't come from anything that's divine. That's like, oh, this is the way. Trust me, like, this is what the whole pretty much blueprint of life is about. They would maybe agree that it's good for that order type of structure, but they would also have no problem of like just going for ultimate power. Like, I don't know if you ever read or heard of the book 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah,
it pretty much teaches you. Yeah, like I've read about probably halfway through the book, but it pretty much, the premise is that we all want power. Power is the end all be all, and these are the laws of how to master it and how to get what you want. Like, because he even gives examples of like a baby, like or a kid. You tell the kid, hey, you can't have any cookies, you can't have any snacks, for the rest of the night. And they may try to sneak into the cabinet and get it. And if you catch them, they're going to play like they didn't know. But, oh, I forgot. Or, oh, I wasn't thinking. Or, oh, I didn't know I couldn't have these. I thought it was only that. They knew the whole time. But they have to do different tactics to try to get what they want. And one of the keys of power is play to people's hearts and emotions. Like, if someone said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. He pretty much is like, the author's pretty much, Robert Greene is saying that, like, behind every act, like even the most innocent ones,
Selfish.
It's all about selfishness, and they're trying to gain power, So again, I think it all goes back to your worldview. I mean, and me being with the kind of worldview or life view that I have, it's a tussle to kind of look like, to accept the fact maybe. Well, when I look deeper into it, at least like as we've been speaking, it's kind of hard for me to see like, how is there any free will if I feel like there's a master conductor and orchestrator that has put everything forth. But then also my life experiences have made me feel like it is free will. Right. Like it's half and half. Like this higher power kind of, if it's a maze that you're going through, the higher power may guide you or like put you here, but then it's like, okay, you want to go left or you want to go right? I'm gonna put you in position, but it's up to you to decide. Like I always felt like that was up to me, because I could have never wanted to go ahead and get myself in a different state of mind. And I never would have wanted to study psychology or study philosophy. Like I would feel like that's my choice. I got up and decided, hey, I'm gonna start running once a day to start feeling better. I'm gonna start changing my diet. I would want to say that was me who said that, right? Because I feel like if Joe Schmo was in my position and he said, well, the way I feel, this is going to make me just go on a tangent and feel like, life means nothing. I'm going to fight everybody I see. I'm going to overindulge in different substances to feel better. They could have went a different way. So it's like, in my core, I do feel like it's a half and half. But then when we've been breaking it down, it's kind of like I got to kind of wrestle with that a little more in my mind to see, hey, was that really your will? Did you choose that? Or is it you just following kind of like your drive to ultimately want pleasure and peace, and happiness, which was granted to you through something greater?
Well, like you're saying, what you're just explaining, how people, even if they're acting kind, it's all for their own motives and for themselves to get more power, is in congruence with the game theory. So the game theory is, if you're playing a game, but it's only one time, it's a one-time episode, you're going to be a lot more upfront and kind of honest with your motives, right? You're going to try to cheat that person. You're going to try to steal at that person. You're going to try to manipulate that person. This is what a lot of psychopaths or narcissists do. They will manipulate that one person, but then they move on. They go to a new city. They're not still friends with them.
Right.
But we live in a society where I'm going to see you again. I'm going to interact with you again. So I'm not going to treat you like that because that's not in my best interest in the future. My best interest is to, sometimes give you what you want, be a nice person, because that's also in my best interest. Because if I just treat you,
I'll never get anything
with
down
tyranny.
the road.
Right. I might win at first. I might get what I want in the first encounter, but then you're never going to talk to me again. And then I lose out. So I have to play this game of give and take so I can ultimately get what I want. That's why we play the game.
And that's exactly what pretty much Robert Greene alludes to in the 48 Laws of Power. He was like pretty much speaking of like how they did things, I guess, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, like where there was like kings and queens and all that type of stuff. A lot of it he alludes to like was like in the 1500s. Like they called it the court. Like you like people would do all different types of things to please the king. Like one, you want to make your accomplishments seem effortless. So if you set up like a great party for the king, you don't make it seem like, you don't ever tell him like, oh, I had to sweep all these floors, I had to invite all these people, I had to clean this, I had to get the food catered here, and oh my god, like the person went the wrong way, and then I had to help him find his way to the palace because that makes you seem less powerful. Because and now, but if he thinks you did it effortlessly, he's gonna say, "Oh, I want that guy to keep coming. I need him to do all my parties," or like, never let people know your true intentions, because it's like he would say like, as soon as you let someone know something, they could defend against it. So you don't want to make it overt or obvious that you're not telling, I guess, the whole truth, or like that you're like kind of hiding certain things. Actually, it's good to kind of relay information or like express the information to a degree with someone like, oh, I trust this guy, but maybe hold certain things back that you may want, like all types of stuff. What was another one? He pretty much was saying like hit with an iron fist that's wearing a velvet glove, pretty much like in this type of day, people are going to pick up on you trying to gain power if you're doing it in such an overt fashion. Right. So if you really want what you want, kind of like what you said with game theory, like you got to play the game. You have to like, maybe in the back of your head, you may know like, hey, I want to get this thing done. Or this is what I really want out of this person. Or this is what I want out of life, or whatever. But you have to have the skill set or the slyness, I guess, to kind of maneuver through the population of people that you're going to be interacting with, and just know how to play the game. Don't like pretty much have a poker face on. Don't sit there and just like wear everything on your sleeve, because no one's going to really care, because they want power as well. So they're not going to sit here and like kind of like just bend to your will because you want them to, because they're in the same chase as well. So and then it also said like the people who seem most kind, and I'm not saying I believe in everything. I'm just kind of like laying it all out there based on the
same
conversation.
Here.
It's like pretty much he said like the most kind person, like the person who's like seems like, oh, this guy's like an angel, this girl's like an angel, man, she wouldn't hurt anybody. Like those are the biggest players in power. He was like, just so happens like you just evaluate. He was like, just look at those who are nice, like or excessively nice or whatever. Just he believes that they're the most dangerous players, because I'm going to assume that it's because of how inconspicuous they can be with their motives, because they're putting in front of you this great character, right. And that kind of goes to play to other people's hearts and emotions. You're not going to notice it, or even if they say, hey, Claudio did this, I'm gonna say in my head, like I'm gonna run the tape in my head, like, no, Claudio was he wouldn't do that, like, so like you kind of like are able, I guess, to be more able to mask it by like kind of being inconspicuous with your endeavors and putting on this type of personality for the population or for the crowd, or for like how they said in the 1500s, the court. But this is what you're really trying to do. Like even the person who set up the party, he may be trying to be the next king. He may be trying to be that guy's right-hand man, but he's not going to say that. He's going to go ahead and do everything that's perfect and make sure that authority figure thinks that he did it effortlessly, and continue to make him happy, compliment him on what he's wearing or whatever. Because then it's like next time, he may want me to do 2 parties, or eventually he may want to promote me to be in a higher class level, So there's always, that's the idea that there's a selfish motive behind everything. So
well, it makes sense exactly what you're saying. Why some people, why you have that balance of sometimes you release some of your motives and let people see what you're up to, but you also don't release it entirely. Because here's the problem: if you are on one side, let's look at both extreme ends. Let's say you're the one side where you just show everything that you're out to do. People aren't going to want to interact or play with you because they realize like you're dangerous. Like you don't care about helping the other. You're going to do whatever it takes in your power to get what you want, regardless of obeying or just like trying to play friendly with this other person. Like you don't care if this is a one-time game. So scary. You can't do that.
Right. And you're threatening their power right there. They're
Absolutely.
not gonna do it from a selfish
but option the other end, like right, you're just super nice, but you never let anyone see your motives. You're also just as dangerous because people don't know really what you're up to or what you really want, and they can't prepare to defend it. But if you're in the middle, if you show your motives, like you show this is what I'm after, but you also act civil, in my opinion, it almost seems like, okay, so they can see what you really want and they can prepare and defend themselves for it, which they can't do with the person who's just always nice. They don't really know what they're after. So I can kind of defend myself if you get out of line, but I also see that you're willing to be nice and play civil, so I don't really have to fear you too much because I know you have some kind of morals. You're not going to go too crazy with this.
Right.
You're going to play fair.
And the thing is that, like, even that person in the middle, how you said, like, shows a little bit of both. The person will actually may be more comfortable than with that person opposed to the person who's extra nice, because it's like
you don't know what they're up to.
Yeah, even like common sense, you just be like, this person's never mad. Like, what's going on? Like, no, something's a little strange here. But even the person in the middle who is like, they're cool, they're nice, you know, they show morals, but they have like that side that's kind of like an asshole or whatever. It's like, you feel more comfortable because it's like, okay, I know their tendencies now. I know what I can defend with. I feel even more comfortable because you showed me some cards. You showed me where it's like, okay, oh yeah, all right. Well, he has road rage, or he gets upset when you make quick changes in plans. Like, oh, I can defend against, not even necessarily I could defend against it, or at least I know what to expect. So if I need to defend against it, I can. Or there's not gonna be any curveballs. He's actually a regular human being, because I get mad sometimes too. So I can see that.
Yeah.
But those probably would be the more smart players, and that kind of goes to how he said,
those are the narcissists. Those are the killers who are good at manipulation.
Right.
They play that role.
Right. Exactly.
It's scary.
Exactly. So.
But what I was going to say though, back to with the free will. So if you look at the argument that we're making here against free will, on paper, it makes perfect sense. So on paper, when we're arguing that free will doesn't exist, and we look back all the way to the history, we're like, okay, yeah, logically, no, free will doesn't exist. But then we also look at nature and we see, okay, how do things interact with nature? Like we say gravity exists because it's like a law. Like that's just how things work. That's just how we see it. So when we look at free will on paper, we say it doesn't exist. But then when we look at free will in the world, we're like, it does exist. Because if you try to apply living without free will in the world, it doesn't work. It's not compatible. It's like it works in a textbook, this idea of no free will, but the idea of no free will does not work in the real world, and that's where maybe we're missing something. Because if you think about it, what happens if you take away this notion that free will exists? Well, you're going to become very nihilistic. You're not going to end up working. Like, you can change your life. Like, if you decide, like, I want to go and work harder and become this thing and achieve success, like, you can do that. But if you have this view that free will doesn't exist, it's like, and there's a difference. Fatalism is not the same thing as what I'm trying to say here with no free will. Fatalism meaning that if you're going to be a great musician, you just sit back and do nothing because it will happen. That's not what no free will is saying. No free will is saying that you have to still take action to do those things, but your desire to take those actions wasn't your ultimate desire. Like, it was programmed from the start. Okay. But it just doesn't really make sense in interacting with the world, because even that notion, once you explain to people that free will doesn't exist, even in that sense of what I just said, that it's not fatalism, but still no free will, it's determinism, people will become nihilistic. Everything loses its meaning. And the world doesn't work like that. The world needs meaning. That's what Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, always says is really what gets people happiness, because suffering is inevitable. You go through suffering, and the way to deal with suffering is you have to find something in your life that is meaningful enough to deal with that suffering, to put up with it. So it's like, it's almost like meaning and these things are just as important to our life and survival. Like, if you take away meaning and make everything nihilistic, meaning that it doesn't matter, people are going to start acting like that. Like, it will have
purge. We have the purge.
Yeah, it'd be like the purge. Like, people will stop trying to pursue these goals. You'll be like, it really doesn't matter, and it's just all kind of programmed to me anyways. I can't take credit for the things I achieve. But if you tell people this does mean something, it is meaningful, and you are in control and you have free will, then they will act differently. So why does that manifest differently in the world depending on what you believe? It doesn't fully make sense to me. Like, it makes sense on paper, but it doesn't make sense in the real world. So maybe it's not true. Maybe we're missing something here.
Yeah, I feel like there's meaning, just because, like, even like just it'll be like the regular day-to-day things, or like some way, somehow, usually the dots are connected in my life where I feel like, even if I didn't understand something at a certain point, or I thought I understood it, I only understood it at a superficial level. And then my higher power has a way of like showing like, boom, like here, like even if it's a job, I'm like, why am I in this job for so long? Like, and when I got out of it, I could look back and say, oh, I was supposed to learn that lesson because this new job that I got I may be pulling skills from that old job. And I'm like, oh, wow, well, if I never was there, I would never understood that. Even in relationships, I'm like, oh, I know why this happened to me with like the first girl I was ever with, because now I'm here, I'm better in this category. That was a challenge I needed to overcome, and it kind of drove me to be better at this and better at that. And I would say, like, the most important thing is the essence of what's going on. Like, if someone has a drive to be a basketball player, right? They just know that every day they wake up, they want to play basketball. They go out there and they just get a gratification of shooting the ball. And the pleasurable thing out of it could be, one, they're exercising. Two, it feels good when they're making a shot. They're releasing dopamine by doing that. They're entertaining others. So that's how you're a service to others, because you become a source of entertainment. Just like back in, I don't know, maybe medieval times, how they had like the big stadium where people would sword fight. It was like entertaining.
Yeah.
Though someone's life was at stake, it's like, hey, it was entertaining. So I feel like whether we want to say this thing is free will or not, at the end of the day, you're still going to have these drives in you. You're still going to have the desire to do certain things.
Yeah.
So maybe we shouldn't be so caught up as to, well, am I determining this, or is something else determining this for me? Because either way, you want to do it. So like, if it's you who's doing it, then it's just like, hey, these ideas and these feelings that you thought, hey, I'm creating, or you're taking more responsibility for, they just happen to be your will. And it's like, look what it's gotten you. And if you had a different will, you have an idea based on like maybe other people's stories or other people's testimonies, like, hey, this is what happens when you go down this path. Or, you can have those same drives and find that like, oh, well, something inspired me to do that, right? Like something kind of like put me on that path. Does it make it any less meaningful? I don't think so, because you're still contributing to the overall picture of life, and you're helping society in some way, because your passion is something that you can't teach that passion. So the fact that you have it, you're going to do that thing to an accelerated level because you love it. You're not just doing it because you have to. You're going to really do it, and therefore when you do it to that extent, someone's going to gain something from it. Like, because almost any craft, though we get gratification from doing it, has some element to it that helps another person, usually. Like, whether you want to be a barber, whether you want to be a construction worker, whether you want to sweep the streets, whether you want to exercise, like, you're going to take that passion and pour it onto someone else. Like, you're going to teach them how to train, how to lose weight, how to gain muscle, which is going to let off hormones within them. Mm-hmm. Or you may not do any of that, and you may just like to just work out. Inspire somebody without you even knowing it, right? Or you're going to be in a better mood now because you work out regularly. You're going to be nice to that person in the grocery store that you may have flipped out on before because you had no other way to get your stress out. So there's always going to be some way that I feel like you're going to help the next person anyway, even though you're getting gratification from that thing. And it's like, whether you want to say, hey, this God gave this to me, or the universe gave this to me, or the nature gave this to me, or I created these thoughts myself, I created these feelings myself, the essence of it all, like what the thing actually is and what you feel about it and how you act upon it, is really the most important thing. And it's like, the other stuff is kind of just confusing, or it's just like, yeah, it may be interesting to know, but you only want to know because then it's gonna be like, maybe it gives you more of a sense of, what do I do from here, or does what I want to do have meaning anyway? Yeah, it does, because you want to do it. It's just simple as that. Like, if you want to do it, it's true. If a kid comes in here and wants to like kick over that tripod, or like clear off this whole desk because they have a tantrum, is that emotional lie? No, it's truth. Now, did God give it to them, or did they just come up with it? Is it just like, because not for nothing, like, there's an element to us that's a higher power, right? Like, I just drank that water, my body just digested that. I didn't tell it to do anything. It took what it needed out of it, put it here, put this in my blood, whatever. It took care of it. I did not think one bit about it, but I did think, hey, let me pick up this water bottle. I feel like I created that thought, like, hey, let me pick this up. But whether I did it, whether I created it or not, I still had that impulse. I still did it. Now, can I give the credit to the higher power that's pulling the strings and orchestrating that and telling me to, hey, do this right now, hey, I may give that credit to that higher power, or it may just been me who wanted to do it. But either way, I did it, and my body feels better now, right? And there's an element to me that is a higher power, and this is also why I felt like it's a blend because of the mind-body connection. Like the mind will tell you, like, hey, I'm supposed to meet Claudio at this place. Let me pull out my phone and and type this into my GPS and figure out the quicker way to get there instead of trying to just find it on a whim. Like that's just logic, right? So it's like, I don't know if my higher power told me to do those exact things, but but maybe the higher power kind of connected us. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It's like, but I feel like it's a blend. Like until I look real deep into it, or a little deeper, which I will after this conversation, I feel like it's a blend. And that's also what's represented in the mind and body. There's a part of you that's effortless, that you don't control. And that's as simple as me drinking that water or eating food and my body digesting it and doing what I had to do. When I was a kid and I got to this age in that process, I would sleep at night. My bones would grow. I didn't control that. I didn't tell it to do that. My heart is beating right now. I'm not even consciously thinking, hey, beat my heart right now. My body is taking that over right now. But at the same time, I thought, like when I woke up, like before I went to sleep, I thought, let me put my alarm clock, set my alarm clock. I woke up, I thought, it'd be a good idea to go take a shower. I thought maybe I should go put something in my stomach, right? Like, and the stomach part, maybe my stomach was actually like saying, hey, we need to eat. Right. But on a typical day, I would have said anyway, like, hey, I probably should get something to eat sometime in the day. So I don't know. Like right now, I feel like it's a blend, but...
Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. Yeah. One thing that you're saying, though, with not being able to control certain parts of your system, right? Mm-hmm. Like your heart beating. It's just you're not in control of that. Mm-hmm. There's some parts is interesting. This guy called Wim Hof, or the Iceman.
Okay. Actually, I know who he is.
Yeah. So have you heard his story?
I haven't heard his whole story, but I know he goes like in these cold, behind like tubs of like ice water, or he'll go to different places in the world and sit in ice water. Yeah. And I think it's like opening.
So he swam underneath in the ocean, under ice, under a meter thick of ice. Wow. Swam under it and didn't have any goggles on. It was just in shorts. Freezing cold water. And his retinas actually froze over halfway through. Couldn't see the end of the hole on the other way through and ended up swimming past it. They had to pull him out and pull him up because just couldn't see where he was going. And did other things too. This one was an interesting one. Because they say that you can't control your autoimmune system, right? That just functions on its own. You preventing yourself from getting sick and healing yourself, as well as your serotonin levels and dopamine levels. You can't be like, take it out, and it just does it.
Right.
He disagrees. Okay. So I'm going to tell you two experiments where it gets interesting. One was they inject him with endotoxemia, which is dead bacteria. Okay. It's harmless, but your body will react at first for 3 hours with severe headaches and fever and feel like vomiting, almost like the flu. 99% of people will get this reaction, 1% just won't. So they do it to him. He just says, I got a little headache, that's it. They're like, oh, well, you're just the 1%, that's why. So then he says, no, I can teach other people how to do this too. And like you were saying, he uses this breathing technique, which helps get more oxygen into the body, raises your pH level and decreases the carbon dioxide in your body. And then he also uses like mind over matter. And he's like, I'll teach people how to do this. So he did a study. It's all on his website too, with like scientific research if anyone wants to look it up, called Wim Hof. Okay. 24 people, 12 didn't go under his training, 12 go under his training. The 12 that went under his training had significantly reduced signs of all the effects from fever and headache compared to the 12 who didn't. Wow. Then another experiment that he did, they submerged him into a tub of ice. So normally what he does is he uses this breathing to prime himself and get ready. But in this tub of ice, it's all the way covered up to like his neck. He's like standing up in it. Okay. So he can't really do this breathing method. It's pushing down on him too hard. So he can't utilize this. So he just has to program his mind before he goes into the ice bath. Once your body temperature reaches about below 84 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to get hypothermia and die. So he goes into it. He's in there for like over an hour and a half, or maybe 2 hours, somewhere around there. His temperature is going from 98, just dropping, 96, 94, 92, 90, 88. I think it goes down to like 86 or 88, somewhere around there. And he can't move. Like he can't run, shiver, or generate any energy or warmth in that part. So it's dropping all the way down to about 86, 88. And then all of a sudden, after like almost an hour being in there, it just goes 88, 90, 92, 94. It's just going back up.
Really?
Yeah. So it's interesting, like your beliefs in these things. And then back to the part of free will and why I'm saying like having control over all these things. when you're at birth, I don't know if this is true, but I heard at birth from one of Jordan Peterson's lectures, the psychologist, that at birth, it's almost like you have every single connection is firing. Like every single part of your brain, all the neurons are connected. And it's just which ones you focus on that stay connected and the other ones aren't being used, just like a muscle. Just like a muscle, they go away. And that's how what'd you describe it? How brain plasticity?
Okay.
That's how that works. So you reconnect those neurons by changing and starting to focus, and it's just like a muscle. Now it gets stronger.
Okay.
And so as a baby, like right now, I can't roll my tongue and do R's or make pronunciations of other languages that they can. But he said that as a baby, they make all those noises. It's just natural. They just make all those. They can roll their R's. They can pronounce any and everything. But the language that they're taught is the one that they stay with, and then they lose their ability to do all those things as they
I've
grow
heard
up.
of that before, yeah.
So I don't know how far this plays into a role, but maybe this also plays into you being able to set, your motives and kind of what you want. Yeah. And even if you can to a point, like you can get older to a point and say, okay, now I want to change my motives, just like how your brain is malleable and you can change that. Maybe you can just say, okay, I want to change it to this direction and I want to go in a different path in life, that you have that ability to do that. So it's like you may have been wired to do a certain thing, but once we're self-aware, and that's what makes us different from all other creatures and pretty much is consciousness, when you're self-aware, you can look back, you can reflect on yourself, and that gives you the ability to literally reprogram how your mind was set. So you may have been programmed for one way, but because we have self-awareness, we're able to reprogram our mind, and that may be what gives us free will.
Yeah. Wow. Shoot, that might be.
That's just my best argument that I have been able to come up with for trying to go against free will.
Right. Just in my being, I really do feel like we do have some form of free will, and we decide, and it's just a question of does that decision come from something greater? But I do believe that in our core we could decide what we want out of life, no matter how we got to that destination. Once we get to a certain desire, or we want to, even when they say what is it, goals, ideas are just dreams until you write them down, then they're goals. You have to take that initiative of writing it down and saying I'm gonna do this, I want to do that. And I'm currently writing a book right now, and how I even got to that was consciously saying, because when I was my mind was all over the place, I would say to myself, I want to kind of I got to figure myself out, I got to figure these things out. I just started writing, so that gave me more conscious thought of what I was going through, what my tendencies are, where life was at that point. And that made me also say, okay, well, next time I'm gonna do this, or next time I'm gonna be this way, or tomorrow I'm gonna make a goal for myself, only think this way, only think these thoughts, no matter what happens, no matter what challenge ensues to throw you off your path, only do that. It's kind of like how you said, if you went through something and then you can kind of reflect on what's going on, which may make us different from animals and stuff, then you can kind of control or make different decisions for the future. So I've experienced that, and it's kind of again, at my core, I want to say we do have free will, because you ultimately decide what you want. But I don't but at the same time, I'm I also feel like happiness and darkness are both a part of life that will never leave. They're a blend,
it's
right?
the yin and yang. They have to. You can't have, I think, something exist without the opposite.
Right. So it's and even saying that, so does free will make non-free will exist? How you say you can't have something without the opposite?
Free will make non-free will. Well, yeah. Just like how I think in order for that to exist, there has to be free will. Even for non-free will to exist, there has to be free will with restrictions around it, which I think is what exists, right?
Okay.
Thoughts come into our head. We didn't have choice of which thoughts come into our head or which impulses that we have.
Right.
But all we have a choice between is which one we're going to choose out of those two.
Right.
Or if we're going to go to that impulse or not.
Yeah.
So it's free will without free will.
Right.
Free will within no free will. To a degree. Still we can get wormholed in there.
Yeah, no. I want to remember, there was this guy, because I read this book, I forgot the guy's name, it was so long ago. It's called Why Does the World Exist? and I remember one philosopher in it said like, it was playing to the free will question, and it was like comparing it to first learning how to ride a bike, and like God is almost like that parent, like you're trying to get things, you're trying to learn how to do this thing, and in the beginning God is helping you, like you know how your parent like kind of helps you onto the bike,
right?
And like you're starting to pedal yourself, but then they're holding the seat and maybe like one arm on the other handlebar to kind of guide you, and then after a while they let you go and you're just going on your own for a little bit. It was kind of like stating that God is like a parent that wants to help you but not make it so obvious that they're helping you, and like eventually will kind of like let you go do your thing. And if you like, but it's like always there in case you need it, like because even when you're riding, doesn't the parent kind of stand like while you're going down the block watching, like okay, let's see if make sure he doesn't fall, okay, make sure everything is good, and then when you need it, it'll come in. But it's almost like, so I can't remember if I think he was trying to say like there's a blend, kind of like how you said with the thoughts, you choose which thoughts or whatever, though I may give this to you, you know, I'll let you decide upon it. And I feel like I said, like in my heart, I feel like there is that blend. Like there is like, okay, I'm going to give you this. Now you decide what you want to do with it. Because it's like, even when I you know, was starting to come to some different enlightenments within myself, I would still have challenges. There were still things I would go through, and at that standpoint, at that cliff, I could say, you know what, yeah, I feel like there was a God before. I did get out of this one situation and I felt blessed, but now, I've been about a couple years of like just BS going on. You know what? F that. I'm not even paying that no mind. I'm gonna start going this way. And like, I don't know. Like, I feel like if I would have did that, I would have felt like this is my choice. Because at any other moment, I could say I don't want to do this anymore. Like, because we always have the ability to flip flop between different. Even if someone is like an alcoholic and they decide not to drink, and they may have like freaking 50-something years sober, they always, though they may not use that decision, they may not decide and use that option. They always have the option to say, hey, like, you know what, I'm gonna pick up now. It's like, so they have the decision, and like, is that free will, or is that like, what else could it be? I mean, if there was no free will, and maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but like how like even in like Christian texts, it speaks of the devil tempting you. Is there a real such thing as temptation? If there's no like, well, if there's no free will, is there such thing as right or wrong? Because if there's no such thing as right or wrong,
there's no such thing as good or evil either. There's
right.
No
so
free will.
Like, it kind of like I think, at least I could be wrong, but I think that in like Christian texts, it kind of is like saying that God. Like almost you don't have free will, right? Like God pretty much like determines things, or like put you like pretty much is the end all be all, omnipotent,
right. Well, to a sense too, though, what the Christian Bible says is, so God programmed you and put you out this way, but He also gave you consciousness.
Okay.
So you're able to reprogram yourself, and that's kind of like where evil comes from. And people are always like, well, how did God create evil people? And it's like, well, He made you this way, but He also gave you free reign to decide if you don't want to know, if you no longer want to be that way.
And that's why I don't understand. It's like, so something I used to wrestle with, and every now and then I think of, I'm like, well, if God created the devil too, or it's like, okay, if I want, like even starting a business, starting a company, if I want the company to run this way, I'm going to do everything that I can to put people in position, to make myself more educated and aware of this field that I'm going into. I'm gonna make sure all my ducks are in a row, all the stars are aligned. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna like put a bunch of good stuff in place and say, you know what, I'm gonna make this a little fun, and like I'm gonna throw some people in here who don't know what they're doing. I'm gonna like screw up my Instagram following on purpose. Yeah. I'm gonna like I'm gonna have meetings with all these people that are gonna help me get to my destination, but I'm gonna like ignore like 5 of them. I'm not gonna I'm not going to be the one to intentionally put the complications or the barriers or the challenges there, right? So like it's almost like, then why would God create the devil if you really want life to work this way, like based on the 10 Commandments? Why give us any other drive? Why give us any other impulse? Why give us any other temptation to say, hey, I'm gonna give you some consciousness. That's kind of like, I think that like that's the Adam and Eve story, like the symbolism between like it's like you ate the apple, so they realized that they were naked. It's like it's also symbolic for saying they got consciousness because they've been naked, but they never realized it. It's like, so when they ate it, it was like, I think it was like
you before you were good and evil, but now you can realize like you're good and evil, and you can see what evil is, and now you can choose to do evil or choose to do good.
Right. So
you see it.
Yeah. So it's like, maybe God didn't tell them to do that, but them like, or did God tell them? Like, because if He didn't tell them and they went against it, that means they have free will. If God did make them do that, it was almost like, what are you trying to trick me? Like, tell me don't do this, but they're going to make me do it. Like, I don't know. It's like there's a lot of things. Like, once we decide on which field is true or that we believe in, it really changes everything that we've known to this point.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why it's not something you could even answer in one podcast or one sit down. Like, you have to really like sit there and like really like think deeply about this, because it changes so much. Like, it changes what you think about procreation, it changes what you think about your parents, about what you've been told your whole life, about your career, about if you want to stay alive right now. Like, when you think of, okay, well, look at all these events that have happened in my life, are you telling me that there was no meaning behind this? Or are you telling me that all this bad stuff that did happen, oh, God made this happen? Oh, this is crazy. Like, so it could take you for a loop in different ways. And it's almost like, I don't know. It's just deep. It's just. I don't know.
Well, it comes down to too. Like, if you think of Saddam Hussein or Hitler or any serial killer, any criminal, and then you say, well, yeah, they had the option to make a different choice. But now put yourself in their shoes. Imagine you're them. You have their same genes. You have their same personality.
Yeah, you're saying they could make. You said they could make a different choice based on your perspective.
Right. You have everything the same. The same situation, the same choices, the same timing, the same events line up, the same thoughts that occurred to you, the same impulses that occurred to you at the exact moment that they made those decisions. Why all of a sudden would you make any different decision?
You wouldn't. You would just do what they did because you're them.
That's the part that I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
No, that's very true. That's something that annoys me too when people say, if I was them. No, if you were them, you would literally be them.
Yeah.
Like, don't say that if I was them. Like, you're basically saying from my perspective.
If I encountered their situation,
right? Yeah,
which
but
is
you're
true.
encountering it from a different perspective though, because you are all the things that, like, anything you've been to doesn't go anywhere. It just accumulates and makes you who you are now.
Yeah.
Like, so, like you said, like, if you're coming at it from your perspective, you're not really being them. So don't say if I were them, because if you were them, you got to encompass everything that comes with that. So,
but studying and looking into this question, that now, like, once I've come to this conclusion, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, does this change anything? Well, it can change things in two ways. One, we can just either be more ethical and empathetic to these people who are just really unlucky. These people who end up, having these tumors or doing these horrible acts. But we're not going to act that way, really. So it really doesn't change much. Maybe it just makes things a little bit more negative. Maybe a little more nihilistic. And it's like, why even bother studying that either is going to have like no impact or no difference on your life or make things worse? Maybe we should only answer questions that make life better. It's like, maybe it's just like a pointless question to even answer.
Yeah, I mean,
like, should we know that? Should we want to be ignorant then?
Yeah, that kind of gets me to what I was saying before, where it's like, who cares if it's free will or something kind of placed that desire in you? If you have a desire, like, you may still, whether we find out, oh, it's all free will, you may still feel good by helping the next person. You may still feel good when you hold the door for the next person, or you surprise someone with lunch, like, hey, boom, like, that still may make you feel good. Now, to say like, hey, did a higher power make me want to do this? Or, was this my own free will that made me want to do this? Is power playing into this, where I just want to get something down for myself in the long run? Who knows? But all we do know is that stay in the moment. Like, this right now makes me feel good. I'm going to do it. Am I going to get in trouble for it? No. Still, you may have like the super ego playing into it, like, the moral aspects of it, because you're going to think, will I get in trouble for this? No. Is it harming anybody? No. Oh, let me just do this. It makes me feel good. But then it's also, we live like in a society that kind of contradicts itself a lot, where I feel like, okay, so you go to jail for murdering someone, but then the whole country that will put you in jail for murdering someone is murdering people every day across seas. So is that not murder? Oh, we could
it's justice. It's revenge. Is what we call
justice. It's like, oh, this could be legitimized. This, we can rationalize why we did this. Like, no, it's murder, right? Like, but when it comes to you, like, so,
because what we do in order to do that is we dehumanize that person. We say they're less than us because they did those things.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened with the Nazis.
Right.
they said the Jews and all these people, they're less than you, and that's why they're able to do those cruel acts to those people.
Right.
I mean, we can't picture it, but it's like that. We're able to torture or kill someone who maybe tortured your kid and killed them. Mm-hmm. Oh, you could easily torture and kill that person because you look at them less and they deserve it. Yeah. Well, that's the mindset that they gave to, like, the Nazis, and that's just the mindset that we have in our justice system towards these criminals.
Right. And he'll say, like, it's just like, okay, we want to go to Afghanistan. Supposedly, at least the story is like we want to go there. We want to go there to get their oil, or Saudi Arabia, all the Middle Eastern countries. Yeah. They got oil. We need it. We want it. We're going to go and do what we need to do. Whether we got to kill people, whatever the case may be. So the kid who's 16 years old and they look in someone's window and they see the Jordans that they have, it's right for them to break that window, try to rob them or steal something from them. And if they come after them, let me shoot him real quick because he's getting in the way of what I want, even though it's his. Even though that stuff is in their land, we say, oh, we like that thing you have. We need that. It's gonna make our people better. Okay, tough luck. That don't got nothing to do with me. I'm sorry. Well, this is we have ours. You keep yours. That's it. No, we need it now. We're gonna bring this artillery in here to demand what we want. So it's like, so that is literally the same act, but one gets legitimized and backed by laws and whatever, and the other one says, no, this is wrong because you're not in the army. You're not doing this for the country. So, that goes back into the theory of nationalism. Like, it's all about, like, just doing stuff for your country. Is it okay then, but not for the individual? Like, it's like there's so much contradiction in the way we live in society that it's almost like we're almost a free world now, or like we kind of accept things and like kind of are like allowing so many more things that it's like which side you choose, like, because even if you say, okay, there is free will, if you say there is free will, therefore, well, even like, okay, so if even if there is free will, like, does that mean that there's no other will? I'm just asking, like,
so if there's free will, does that mean determinism? Determinism is the opposite of free will. Like,
okay.
We'll play it that way.
So this is my thing, like, so,
or fatalism.
If someone says that I do have free will, like, are they saying like I have 100% free will? Or are they saying we as humans have 50-50? We as humans have 37?
Well, there can be degrees. No,
there can be degrees. So they just wonder, do we have free will at all?
Right.
Yeah, well, I think that's okay, because it's like, either way, it's like, okay, even if you have free will, the question is what happens as a result to these actions. Like, if you have free will and you decide to murder someone, do you still go to hell? Are there still consequences there? Do you still go to jail? It's like, what does it mean? Like, and I kind of get what you're saying, because it's like, oh, well, if there is no free will, then the person who killed someone shouldn't go to jail, right? Because it's like, I didn't do this. It was God who made me do this. Like,
well, Sam Harris's argument against it is and it makes sense. It actually could make the world a better place, but just when I know it, if I really believe it, it makes me feel more nihilistic and like nothing really has meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes me feel worse. But his view on how it makes the world better is that, okay, when someone's a killer or they come in and break into your house and try to shoot you, it's not saying that you should be like, oh, I understand. It's not really his fault. It's his whole life accumulation from everything to the molecules. He's not saying that you should sit there and let him kill you and rob you.
Yeah.
Shoot him.
Yeah.
You do that. But what he's saying is, all right, let's say someone ends up in jail or someone kills your family. Rather than having this vengeful and trying to having this resentment and going after them, or punishing people for these things in more of to satisfy your feeling, right? So we kill someone who's murdered someone. We put them on the death penalty and death row. Because it makes us feel better, like justice, yes. Well, he's saying get away with that. That doesn't solve anything. They really were just unlucky people who ended up doing having that personality and doing those things. But punishment still does have its place, though, is what he says. So just like, consequences will influence you to do different things. So rather than placing unjust consequences that don't help them improve their lives, only punish them in ways that help them improve their lives. So like if your kid does something you don't want them to do, there's ways to punish them that will make them act better. You do those ones. You punish them not because you are pissed at what they do and you just want to punish them and make them. You punish them because it makes them better. And he's saying that's how we should relate to these criminals: is only punish them in ways that makes them better. And that's different for every person. But don't just do it to satisfy your vengeance.
Right.
Which is that's still just hard to do, though.
That makes a lot of sense, though. It's a creative way, or like more of a logical way of him
very logical
breaking that down. Yeah, I mean, because initially Me Too is like, I always would think to myself, shoot, if there is no God, if there is no free will, then it's almost a immediate negative mood that comes over you, where it's like, or like a selfish mood that's like, it doesn't even matter. Like,
right. Well, even knowing that, I still feel that way.
Yeah.
Even knowing that, I should be more
why would I want to
ethical.
make them feel better? Why don't I just shoot them and kill them myself? And we don't gotta go through no death row or whatever. Because I'm not going. Because my thing is that, like, the only thing that would prevent you from doing that, or say like, hey, let me like make a good consequence for them to make them better, is if you believe that there is some type of reward or consequence for that to a greater degree. Like, is there eternal life? Like, you know, if this person continues to be bad, well, they're going to be on a bad path and they're going to be punished forever, eternally. Or if I get back at them because there's free will, the only thing that will prevent you from not getting back at them is like, whoa, well, if I get back at them, am I going to lose my seat in eternal life? Am I going, so it's almost like, so maybe the question isn't so much of whether there's free will or not. It's more so like, what happens when it's all done? Like, what happens in the afterlife? Because, like, if you know what happens when you die, none of us have died. I mean, they have the stories of people who died for like 10 minutes and came back and they say, I saw the light or whatever, or I saw nothing or whatever. But as far as I know, I'm talking about just dying and never coming back. None of us have ever died before, right? So how can we say what happens then? But I think that once we answer that question, we can have more of a guide on our behaviors. Like, if you know that. Because, like, if you know, like, even if there's no free will, well, I don't know. I feel like, well, I don't know, because I have like a million thoughts in my head right now.
I know, it happens to me too.
I'm like, if there's no punishment in an eternal form after you do quote unquote bad deeds or undesirable deeds to others on the earth, what's going to prevent you from doing that, whether there's free will or not free will? If there is a consequence, whether there's free will or non-free will, that's the thing that's going to hold you back ultimately, I think. Like, when you think of, and not even just eternal life, like what happens, like,
right, trying to make the best life here.
Because, like, it's like, if nothing happens to me regardless, if I die and nothing happens to me, or if there are no divine consequences on earth for my action, if it's literally just null and void. It's just a behavior, just a behavior. I did it. There's no good or bad to it. There's no meaning to it. That means I can do whatever I want, and nothing's necessarily going to happen to me. I think you're more likely to do these things. But then, if there is going to be a consequence, whether it's free will or not free will, that's going to be like probably the only thing that will hold you back. Like, if we knew that, like, yeah, you guys can do whatever you guys want. You can have a free for all. But if you do this is what's going to happen. If you do that, this is what I'm going to make happen. But I'm giving you that free will. I don't control nothing you want to do. If that's God saying that to us, like almost how a parent would say it to kids playing in a little playpen or whatever, some kids are still going to say, well, I'm going to hit this kid in the face with this ball because it's going to make me feel good. And yeah, I'll deal with the consequences. Some will say, oh, no, I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to end up with that consequence.
Maybe that's where free will comes into play.
I think that's what the most important, like, what it all comes down to. It's like, what happens after? Like, because at that point, I would really care less if it's like free will or not free will. I'm going to just, well,
there's consequences even instead of just the afterlife in this current life. So even if you don't care about what happens to you after, if you just straight up die, in this current life, if you make a good action, people are going to respond to you in one way. If you make a bad or an evil action, people will respond to you in that way. And we are self-aware enough to realize that if I do a good deed for this person, the probability that something good or something that I want to happen back is going to happen to me. And we also are self-aware enough to realize that if I murder this person, I'm aware of the consequences that will come. It's going to be a life in prison in here. And that's not something that you want. But like being aware of those consequences, I feel like almost is what gives you free will. Like, that kind of makes more sense. All right, so the murderer who says maybe all they have is these impulses to kill people. And, like, that's the only thoughts that come into their head. But they're not dumb unless they have a really bad disease or something. Right. It's case for some, but most are pretty intelligent.
Yeah, they accept that murder from top to bottom.
Exactly. They conceptualize it, and I'm pretty sure they know what's on the other line for them, if they're going to go to jail or not, or if they're going to die. And the fact that they decide to do it anyways is almost like a free will to a degree.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
unless they just don't have a care. I don't know. That's Just one thought.
Let's think a second.
Like that's the answer to the consequence in case like you don't care about the consequence in the afterlife. There's still consequences in this life. Like the reason we act civil to each other is because we want to enjoy this life while we're here. Even if it doesn't mean anything, we want to at least enjoy it. So that's why we kind of act in a certain way.
Yeah. Couple of things I'm thinking of. I'm picking up this one philosopher, I forget his name, who said like he talked about like the gamble of life, where it's like it doesn't matter, like pretty much based on everything that we know, you might as well just be good, because if we die and there's nothing after death anyway, then there's just nothing. It's like, okay, but if we die and there is something, at least you're on the good side of it,
right?
Like so, you pretty much cover yourself in both domains regardless. So that's that's one idea of looking at it. But then I also feel like
well, it makes sense, but then it comes down to the Jesus Christ thing as well, which is it doesn't matter if you're a good person or a bad. From what I've brought up to believe or understand is that it doesn't matter if you're a good person or bad person, or if you do evil acts or good acts. All the thing that matters is if you believe in Jesus Christ and accept Him into your heart.
And what was the intention of what you came from?
Right, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up.
And then I was gonna say, well, and then if God created both, like if God created Jesus as well as the devil, how can there not be free will? Because He gave us an innate choice to decide.
Right.
If that's the case, because otherwise you would just have it one way. I feel like there is like you're not gonna like, and if that's not the case, if God made both in order to kind of like control us and make some go one way and one go another way, at the same point, it's like, okay, then what's the point anyway? Because it's like, what am I trying to really say? It's like free, like
it's tricky.
In one way, it's almost like there has to be free will because you gave us two options, and it's like if it's not, then you gave us these two options anyway. We're going to be on one side anyway, so who cares? Right. It's almost like you kind of feel indifferent. You can either feel real different. You either feel real indifferent towards it, or you can feel like you do have free will and your choices matter. If you gave us two, you gave us two to choose from. So it's
the fact that there's consequences to your choices means that they have meaning and means that they matter. And in order for something to matter, you have to have free will to make that distinction.
That's very true. Yeah.
But then again, if you look at animals, there's consequences for their actions.
Right.
And they get to really choose.
And I don't think they have the same conscious level of thought as we do.
No, maybe not. This is.
So it's just a balance, man. It's just life is just like, I think just pain and pleasure. There's two sides of the coin. And when you go through it, you're going to experience both, and you can make decisions based on both. But I don't know if I have the complete thorough answer of, did God give me these impulses and give me all these choices of action that I make along that journey, or is it only me? And do I believe in karma? Do I believe that my actions have a reaction in the domain that I choose to place them in, whether it's good or bad? Do I believe good will come back to me or bad will come back to me? If I do, then it doesn't matter. Like the biggest question is like not whether there's free will or not. It's like, or it's just about making that right choice, making the choices that you want in order to kind of increase the likeliness of having the life that is more desirable, whether it's in this current form or an extended form after. That's the ultimate thing. What happens to you? What do you get out of this? What will be the result? Once we know what the result will be, whether you want to say it's free will or not, you're going to want to probably just innately, from my best estimation, want to be on the side that more pleasurable things happen to you, more desirable things come your way.
So your kind of thought on it is, in order for free will to exist or not exist, you have to know what's in the afterlife to determine if you want to do good or bad, or that kind of influence.
Because I feel like the typical human being, if we have this understanding of what happens, like if we understand like this is the playing field, this is what's going on, and if you do this, this happens, or the likelihood of doing this thing is this outcome. We can like conceptualize it all and make more concrete decisions. Now, whether that higher power is giving me this way to conceive it or giving me this power to decide or whatever, I feel like a human being is going to want to stay more on the side of pleasure and beneficial things happening to them, whether it comes from a selfish motive, a humanitarian motive. We are kind of just more prone to want pleasure or like being in a state of ease and content, and we'll do what we have to do to get there, whether it's from a selfish point of view, humanitarian point of view, a higher power driving it. I think that just by direct experience, I've found that we want to have pleasurable feelings, enjoyable feelings, and we're going to do what it takes to get there, whether it's through our own means or giving the credit to a higher power and saying that we were designed this way. So I don't know. I think out of all, I kind of feel like the best thing to do for now, or for someone who may not understand which or decide which way to choose, is just to understand what is. Just enjoy your behaviors for what they are, your impulses, your drives for what they are. Because I think that we, like I said, we want to be in a state of content, and we're going to do what it takes to get there. So instead of questioning why you have this impulse or why this drive, just kind of be aware of what it produces, and therefore you can more effectively make your decisions. And I think that those decisions usually point us in the direction of getting what we want, whether it's through a subtle way of power, whether it's because something programmed us to be that way, or we're just simply deciding this. We're deciding it for a reason, even if it is free will, you know. And I think that that idea of pain or pleasure, happiness or darkness, is kind of what orchestrates these things. And, you know, that's that, no matter which side you choose.
I agree with what you're saying, too. I think the self-awareness is almost what gives us that sort of free will. The fact that, yeah, we may have been programmed one way, but like we're aware of it, just allows us to realize that we have two options. And realizing that you have two options is almost like what gives you free will. I mean, we can go into a rabbit hole with this, and they're kicking us out now. Yeah. But there's a lot of topics that I didn't even get to ask you about. Man. We spent a whole hour and a half just on this one. Right. Are you open to in the future talking about some other topics?
Man. Absolutely, man. I love this type of stuff, man. This is what I live for, man. This is the stuff that kind of keeps me going and I'm interested in, man. And I'm glad that you even gave me the opportunity to be on your podcast, man. It seems like something great, and it's definitely giving people something to think about. You know what I'm saying? And like just kind of like not staying superficial, because you could get superficial anywhere you go. So the fact that you have a platform to really discuss these things, shoot, when I leave here, I'm going to be contemplating this and trying to figure out some more answers, and I hope we could discuss some more things in the future, man.
Thanks for being a guest. First, I have a couple more questions. Where can they find you at? Where do you want them
on
to come?
Instagram, at NouveaVee, NOUVAYAVEE. That's my Instagram, and I post things pretty much daily to help each individual reach what I call their pleasure maximum, a state of relaxation, happiness, and peace. And the goal is to change the world by helping each individual first. So that's pretty much that. And if they're not following you, they need to follow you. And I think it's your first and last name,
yeah,
right?
First and last name, right. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, man, what you're doing on your page and what you want to do in life, and, you know, being in college and striving for degrees, as well as inspiring other people and putting information out there and staying active on your page, you're doing great things, man. So, man, it's an honor to be on here. And if someone's not following you, they're not doing the right thing. They need to use, whether it's free will or a higher power's will, they need to use that will and tune in, man.
Thank you, man. Same to you. You're an excellent guest, and they need to follow you too, because you have amazing content. I've watched your past few videos that you put out. But for those who like this podcast, the next one, some of the topics that I wanted to get to but didn't have time to, I wanted to dive into more of what Reshard does, and just more of his thoughts on making life as good as possible, and how he's overcome his obstacles and his journey, and what his future goals are and what he wants to get to. So those were a lot of topics that we missed. So what we'll probably do next time, in the first 10 minutes, we'll see if he came up to any new conclusions that won't take us into a rabbit hole on this free will topic. But after 10 minutes, we'll cut it, and we're going to go into all those other topics.
All right, cool. Perfect, man. Sounds good to me.
All right. Take care, guys. Thank you, Reshard.
All right. Thank you.